Our scripture lesson today is taken from the Hebrew Bible. It's the Song of Hannah, which many of you will recognize as the inspiration for the Magnificat, for Mary's song when she finds out that she is pregnant with Jesus in the gospel telling. But our song is much older, the Song of Hannah. It's from 1 Samuel, verses 1 through 10, and it's a tremendous song of rejoicing and of rebellion, and I'm sure we'll be finding out more about that in the sermon. And Hannah prayed, "My heart exults in the Lord. I have triumphed through the Lord. I gloat over my enemies. I rejoice in deliverance. There is no Holy One like the Lord. Truly there is none beside you. There is no rock like God. Talk no more with haughty pride. Let no arrogance cross your lips. For the Lord is an all-knowing God. By God all actions are measured. The bows of the mighty are broken, and the faltering are girded with strength. Men once sated must hire out for bread. Men once hungry hunger no more. While the barren woman bears 7, the mother of many is forlorn. The Lord deals death and gives life. She makes poor and makes rich, casts down into Sheol and raises up. He casts down and also lifts high. She raises up the poor from the dust, lifts up the needy from the dunghill, setting them with nobles, granting them seats of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's. He has set the world upon them. She guards the steps of the faithful. But the wicked perish in darkness, for not by strength shall men prevail. The foes of the Lord shall be shattered. He will thunder against them in the heavens. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. She will give power to a ruler of her own choosing, and triumph to her anointed one." Here ends the reading of the living word. Thanks be to God.
First of all, thank you for allowing me and inviting me to preach this morning. I would like to open my message by saying to you all that I am happy to be a childless cat woman, and if the person who scolded us for being that is listening, thank you very much. I would also like to say that I am auntie to about 250 men who have been, are, and still are in a maximum security prison. I am their auntie, I am their teacher, I am their friend. Now, I think I can start. I didn't know when I was asked to preach on Mother's Day whether I would choose the Magnificat of Mary or the raw version, the impudent version of Hannah. And I decided to go with Hannah. While both wind up talking about justice, which I will do too, they begin in different places. With Hannah, I see raw power. It's raw, it's crude. And she's not fighting for somebody else. She's fighting for herself. Because as a barren woman who has no child, particularly a son, she is low on the totem pole. With the other wives who have children, and she doesn't have any children, and certainly she doesn't have a son, so she has no status in Israel. She can't sit at the table and speak her mind and have the authority that a mother can, particularly if the mother has a son. Now, I want to back up a little bit because the writers of these texts that we have come from multicultural dispositions and different time zones, and they're all put together in what we call the Textus Receptus, or what we have before us, and that is what we need to deal with. But Hannah is actually representing an authority and a power that women had who filled the bill for having a son. She doesn't have it, she's at the bottom of the barrel. And what she is doing is crying to God for power and status for herself. And that's the first point here. The woman is crying for her own dignity on her own terms with the God of Israel. Now, men wrote all of these texts, so I ask myself, why are you actually putting women, Hannah, for instance, in a position where her husband looks like a drip? And I go back to Abraham and Sarah and Hagar, where Sarah and Hagar make Abraham look like a drip. Somehow, when these writers have put women who are named and whose stories are told up front for all of us to read, the men are in the background, sort of like an Ingmar Bergman movie, where you focus on the women because they've got the power, they've got the influence, they've got the truth, they've got the justice, and I don't know what the men are doing there. To begin with, they're not needed. So I try to look at it through the writer's point of view. Why did you do this, Mr. So-and-so, for the sake of a woman's agency on her own behalf? What's going on here? What I think is going on here is that there is an incipient initial power in women which we Christians don't want to recognize. Our mothers, for instance, are nice. And they are always for the other person, never for themselves. This is what the narrative is going to be in the White House, to the point where the only woman who's a good woman is doing whatever she is for somebody else and never for herself. We have to counter that, and I'm using the Bible as my source for countering that, because a bunch of patriarchs told me that Hannah is doing something not only that she wants to do, but should do. So in looking back through the text, I notice that when these women take up the banner for themselves to raise their own status, their own power, their own influence, their own voice, they are doing something very Semitic that's not just true of the Israelites, but of true of the Syrian women. It's not that the priestess idea is here, although it may be. It's that a role the women play is to change the rules of the game, of the patriarchy. Not because boys are bad, it's just that they don't know what to do. What does Hannah do to get what she wants for herself? Girls, live life for yourselves. Don't let others tell you to do something else. That's the first lesson. But what happens when Hannah exerts this power for herself? She makes a deal with God. She makes a bargain. As a friend of mine said, it's transactional. God, You know I'm miserable. I have nothing. I'm nobody. My husband says he'll love me 10 times more than if I had 10 sons. He's not the one I'm interested in. I'm not interested in my husband. I'm interested in me. Help me. Do right by me. And this is the deal. She makes a deal. If you give me a son, I'll give him back to you. Okay? I'll have this son, but this son, this particular son, is not going to continue my line. It's not going to continue the line of my husband. It's going to continue your line. This son will be devoted entirely to you. So that's the deal. You give me a son, I give him back. Her husband has nothing to do with this. However, she has made a vow, and in making that vow, her husband has to make good on it. So if she says, God, I'm going to build you a temple, the husband has to build it. Otherwise, the two of them are in trouble. So when Samuel is born, and he's weaned, and Hannah is going to take him to Shiloh, where she's going to deliver him up to Yahweh, all her husband says is, yeah, okay, whatever. And it's that direct relationship between Hannah and God, and the deal that they make between them, the one that her husband has to put the good housekeeping seal of approval on, that made me choose Hannah for this message today. By being for herself, she has started the ball rolling that changes the rules of the game for Israel. Samuel gets to anoint the first king, who turns out, Saul, who turns out to be something of a lemon. The people reject him. God rejects him. Okay, Sam, says God, we'll go on to the second one. The runt of the litter, Jesse, David. Her self-interest winds up in the king of Israel, who is David. And just a little aside here, tiny aside, what we should be reading to understand more of what's going on in the Old Testament is the rivalry between the tribe of Benjamin and the tribe of Judah. That hidden rivalry, that hidden conflict runs through the Bible. And if you get to Paul, when he's trying to talk about Jesus to the synagogue, he says, well, my credentials are pretty good. You know, not only am I an Israelite, but I'm of the tribe of Benjamin, which would have some meaning to the Jews in the room. The first king of Israel, rejected, but in Esther and Mordecai, who are Benjaminites, saved the people of Israel. Now that is a subtext, a sub-narrative of the Bible that I certainly didn't learn in Sunday school, but I did learn when I started taking the Bible seriously. So she's right in the middle of what would become, in fact, she's starting it, she's initiating it, what would come to be the rivalry between Benjamin and Judah. And with her, the time of the judges is over. She didn't know that. All she was thinking of was herself. And that turned out to be a pretty good thing. So girls, if you think of yourselves, don't think you're not doing a pretty good thing. In addition to Hannah's rawness, she has taken her pain and she's thrown it out there to the world. So after she realizes she's going to have a son, she's going to sit at the table, women aren't going to laugh at her, as they still do in certain societies today. Not realizing or caring that it's the males who chooses the sex of the fetus, not the woman. It has nothing to do with her. She actually creates a panoply of oppression that's generally experienced by most of us in the world at sometimes in our lives. So here's where Mary and Hannah move together. Why justice after this? Well, in Hannah, it's easy to see for me. She looks at herself and her lowly estate, just as Mary looks at herself and her lowly estate. And Hannah is lifted up because she's got this bargain with God, and he's making good on it, she's making good on it, he's making good on it. And then we transition to the world's pain, to the world's injustice. And this great informed criticism, it's repeated time and again, this leveling. The poor will be lifted up, the rich will be put down. I repeat that. The poor will be lifted up, and the rich will be put down. Hannah, there's a little sentence in there that needs unpacking. Hannah talks about the one who eats well will hire out his bread. What that means is that he will become an indentured servant or a slave. So that's what she says God is going to do to the folks who have too much. Whereas persons like herself, although she has material resources, but persons like herself who have no dignity, don't have respect, will be sitting at the table with the nobles. It can't get, for me, it couldn't get any more concrete than that. It couldn't get any more raw. And so I look at Hannah as a precursor to what Mary is doing, but I love her in a way more than Mary because she's doing it for herself. She has taken the initiative on her own behalf. And when it comes to women, we're not supposed to do that. There's still this aura of don't shoot the moon. That's not your job. Excuse me. You can't be a good woman or a good mother if you do that. You're never going to be president of the United States if you want to shoot the moon, if you're ambitious. Oh, don't do that. So women cut themselves off almost at the beginning of the trajectory of their careers. Hannah changed the meaning of career. Hannah changed the meaning of justice for women, which meant justice for yourself. Now, I want to put Mary and Hannah together. The cry for justice, that the two, converges the two, is put into their mouths. But these cries have been going on, sisters and brothers, since Gilgamesh, when the people cried out to the gods, and the gods heard them. They took the initiative. Hannah takes the initiative. And in our tradition, God hears the cry. First you cry. First you speak up. First you shout out. And then God hears you. This runs into the New Testament too. If we look at the healing stories and the miracle stories in the Gospels, How many of the persons who are healed are not taking the initiative? Every time I hear somebody say, oh, it's not me who's calling for help, it's the God within me. Or it's not me who wrote this poem, it's the God within me. Would you stop it already? The hypocrisy in this. And most of all, it's fear that you'll be rejected if you don't take pride in what you do. In terms of mothers per se, the mothers crying out for justice for their children is not old. It's now. It's right at this moment. The grandmothers in Argentina took on the junta when they started protesting. Yes, this time for their sons and their brothers and their fathers and those who had disappeared. Right now, there is a grandmothers group. It's sort of like a barbershop quartet. And they do skits on the injustice of the current regime. I don't call it a government, I call it a regime because that's what it is. Let's use the English language well. The regime is being called to account by grandmothers in the United States right now. And they're doing it for the sake of this country, for the sake of their grandchildren, for the sake of children to come. They're doing a Hannah. They're doing a Mary. You and I have a job to do when we think of mothers as initiators of the road to salvation instead of responders or recipients or, oh, thank you for the flowers, while there's a man next to you who's dying from hunger. I don't buy this. I don't buy this. Nor do I think that the holiness of the act of agency on the part of women is reduced because they want a good life for themselves. In the Bible, I go back to the Old Testament now. In the Bible, the power that women have is usually understated. If you go to Proverbs, which is very late in the game, and Lemuel, the son, is being given instructions by the mother who would want the best for her son, right? I want you to marry this kind of girl. She's a multinational corporate exec. You can look at Martha Stewart and say, I don't like her, but this is the kind of wife that Lemuel's mother wants him to take. And what does he do, sisters and brothers? Nothing. He sits at the gate. Meanwhile, she's in trade. Meanwhile, she's not just making a household, she's making a world. So I'm going to close with this understanding that agency, the power of initiating for yourself, especially when you're on the bottom, especially when you know and you know that you're on the bottom, and you don't cry out, you're not obeying God. You are really not obeying God. And if you don't cry out for yourselves, what is your name? Do you have a name? What is your name? So you have to cry out for yourselves in your own name. Doing so may lead you into places you will never see or know. A recap. Sarah and Hagar begin a story. Hagar talks directly to God, God talks directly to Hagar. Sarah even laughs when God says, you're going to have a son. Oh, yeah, sure. And then there's this little interchange. Why'd you laugh, Sarah? I didn't laugh. You did too. And I think that's marvelous because it shows the intimacy already between Sarah and God that Abraham doesn't have. So we're in good shape. We begin in good shape. And they start the ball rolling in what we call Heilsgeschichte, or holy history, salvation history. So look at these stories about women in the Bible. The Shunammite woman, who has no name except Godolah, which means she's a very important woman. Look and see what she does. She talks to the prophet, not supposed to talk to the prophet. She causes him to resurrect her son. Yes. Get a load of how these stories point the way to another chapter in the history of Israel, a paradigm shift. Just one more thing, and we'll continue. Please don't get romantic about Ruth. Ruth has a very savvy mother-in-law. She is not an Israelite. She is a Moabite and the grandmother of David, which means there's nothing pure about the lineage of Israel. It's a hybrid, and David is a hybrid. At least that. But what does Naomi tell Ruth to do? She has a wonderful relationship with Boaz, but it isn't the one she wants. She wants to go up. She wants to go up. So she tells Ruth to go dress yourself up in perfume and all this kind of stuff, and then lie down at the feet of Boaz and uncover his feet. That is not feet, that's a pun. It means uncover his nakedness. It means uncover his genitalia. Yes, Lord, they're there. And she could be killed. She could have been immediately thrown out, killed. Naomi was a relationship, so maybe not so bad. Instead, he marries her. It's this kind of courage that changes the rules by the way Israel is saved. So go back and read these stories of women. You're not going to find out that they're all loving, that they're all kind, that all they want to do is no harm. No, that is not true. The heroines, the mothers of Israel, started a new chapter, whether they knew it or not, in the salvation story. Mary is continuing a tradition that starts a new chapter in the history of salvation. And her sidekick is Mary Magdalene, who was never a prostitute, but a savvy, rich woman who followed Jesus because that's what she did. So God bless you all. God bless mothers, males and females alike. And never be afraid to stand up for yourself, because if you don't, God may not be too pleased. Amen.